Toby Young, a man who pops up now and then on TV just to remind us that he's still there, most notably, in my opinion, for reviewing a film called I, David Blake. Now, this film is a fictional film, but it was based on countless research into the DWP system. Now, the film follows David Blake, who suffers a heart attack, who's unfit for work, but is told by the DUP that he has to go back to work. Toby Young wrote this off as nonsense, despite the fact that there are literal thousands of cases where people who are unfit for work have been told that they must go back to work by the DWP. Now, this isn't Toby Young's fault, but to simply palm it off and say that it's not true because the main characters in this film are a far cry from what you'd see on Benefit Street is either intellectually dishonest or flat out ignorance. But back on point, why am I talking about him now? Well, Toby Young has just been made a university regulator. If all I had to go on was his opinions of Department of Work and Pensions and how they treat people, I'd be as concerned as I would be for any Conservative taking any role in government. But Toby Young is something a little bit special. Toby Young in the past has come out and said that wheelchair access is ghastly, that working class students are a stain on society, and even better than that, he's even come out and said that people with disabilities are functional, illiterate troglodytes. This is the man who's meant to regulate universities. This is the man who's meant to teach or meant to ensure that our best and brightest are being taught to a high standard. The man is every bad word you can think of. He's sexist. Just spend 5 minutes on his Twitter and it's constant sexism. He's an elitist. He's the definition of an elitist, not only wanting the top brass to have any kind of education. He's misogynistic. He doesn't believe in democracy. He doesn't care about the country in any way, shape or form. He just wants to make as much money as he can and have his friends make as much money as he can. People like this are running the UK government. And it just goes to show the sorry state of affairs that we're in when people like Theresa May, the Prime Minister, puts him in places like this. When Michael Gove, the backstabbing piece of filth that he is, backs him constantly. I'm probably going to say this 1,000 times over the coming year, but the UK deserves better. It deserves better than someone who thinks working class people are a stain. It deserves better than someone who has nothing but disdain for the disabled. Let's move on to Jeremy Corbyn. Now, every time opposition to Corbyn comes up, it comes along on the same basic principles. He's not realistic about finances. He's made hollow promises about student loans. He's a terrorist sympathiser. The mainstream media are so soft on Jeremy Corbyn. I'm calling BS on every single one of those. Now, here's why. First off, with the mainstream media. In the UK, the big dogs, if you like, are BBC News and Sky News. In September, Jeremy Corbyn won a Nobel Peace Prize. That was not touched by the vast majority of mainstream media. In fact, I don't remember seeing it on any TV news outlet whatsoever. So how is that being soft? How is that playing to his advantages? When most of the time it comes out, either he's said something daft on a Virgin media, on a Virgin train, which is usually, why hasn't people got seats? I mean, that's not really that daft, is it? I mean, this morning it came out that in the UK we spend 50% more on train tickets than the rest of Europe. And yet, if you're on a long journey, even if you're part of the busy stretch on any train line, there's not a guarantee that you're going to have a seat. If I go from where I live to the capital, to London, I'm likely to get a seat because I'm more or less at the start of the trip. But by the time I get 5-6 stops in, certainly if I have to change at Ashford International, it's not a guarantee. And for people who have to start their 9-to-5 jobs, that's even worse. Something else that keeps popping up which really annoys me is the whole terrorist sympathiser shtick that he gets. Now, first off, if you're going to criticise Jeremy Corbyn for alleged ties and sympathies to the NRA, then by the same standard you have to be shocked and disgusted with the DUP, who have stronger ties to actual terrorist groups. Now, I'm not saying the NRA wasn't a terrorist group, but Jeremy Corbyn didn't fund them. What Jeremy Corbyn wanted was to sit down and have peace talks. That's not a terrorist sympathiser. That's being smart, because you can't kill terrorism with bombs. People have also come out and said that he's a Hamas sympathiser. Now look, I'm not supporting any terrorist group, but at least you can understand Hamas. Palestine has been occupied for years, and the entire world has turned their back. Every single day, the Israeli government, the Israeli army, murder innocent children in Palestine. Palestinians cannot get out of that situation. And every single day, Palestinians have to give up a little more land, a little bit more freedom. They're on calorie-controlled diets, for God's sake. And yet, we're just supposed to support Israel completely? No. You can understand where Hamas come from. So you can understand when people say, okay, I get that what Hamas are doing. Doesn't mean that you're a terrorist sympathiser. It just means you're actually waking up and looking at what's happening. Now, when it comes to things like the budget, with student debts and everything else, first off, there was no concrete promise that he was going to get rid of it. He said we shouldn't have it. And no, we shouldn't bloody have it. Look at every other country that's doing better than us. They don't have crippling student debt. So why are we being forced to have it? Especially when we now have people like Toby regulating our universities, making sure that it's not an unbiased environment. It's not a thriving learning environment. It's not a diverse environment. If Toby is left to his own devices, it's going to go back to the way it was 100 or so years ago, 200 years ago, where it was the elitists and only the elites who ever got an actual education. What Jeremy Corbyn has said is not unreachable. We can have no student debt, or at the very least, we can get rid of a large percentage of it. We can actually have money back into the country. It's actually it's actually a very simple system. We just need to abandon this trickle-down economics bullshit that we are being forced to endure, because it just doesn't work. It has never worked, and it's not just some hippie sat here telling you that it doesn't work. Every single time it's been tried, it has failed, and it has either led to a depression, a recession, or it has been saved at the very, very last second, and not particularly well. We are at the breaking point. In fact, we've passed the breaking point. We now have so many worries with so many different things, and leaving the European Union really isn't going to help that. But instead of actually focusing on the problem, we're letting division get between us. We're told by people like Jeremy Hunt that the NHS is failing because junior doctors are lazy and because of health tourism. Actually look at the facts. In fact, speak to someone in the NHS and see how true that is. The NHS is failing because it's not being funded. Where's that money going? It's going into private contracts to people like Richard Branson, who has made a profit of millions, if not more, and then turned round to sue the NHS. And yet he comes out and proclaims to be a saviour and says that he can fix it and we deserve better, which we do deserve better, but we're not going to get it from him. It's time we stopped walking around with our heads in the sand. We need to wake up and actually look at what's happening. If someone says, no, we can't do it this way, ask them why, and then ask if anyone else has done it. Why does Australia have a better healthcare system than we do? Why does Canada have a better healthcare system than we do? Why does Canada have a better education system than we do? What are they doing that we're not doing? It actually comes down to a very simple premise. People who are at the top making all the decisions are funneling money towards them. It's not going into the system. It's not going where it needs to go. It's going into more pay rises for high bench MPs. This has to stop.